I thought I was hearing a man to fix my yard. Instead, he called me 7 times in 40 minutes because he could hear a baby crying from my basement. And the scariest part, my daughter wasn't even home. But that wasn't the worst part, not even close. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about my divorce, my ex-husband, and the house I'd been barely holding together. My name is Arya. I'm 31, and I work as a billing specialist at Dr. Whitfield's pediatric dental office. It sounds stable when you say it out loud, like a life with clean hallways and predictable paychecks. But stability is a costume. Under it, I've been doing the kind of math that makes you tired before the day even starts. Not saving for vacation math. More like, do I buy laundry detergent or the field trip permission slip math. I've been divorced for 14 months. I have a 6-year-old daughter named Phoebe, and I swear she's the only reason I ever learned how to keep going while I was falling apart. My ex-husband is Troy Lyndon. And if you've ever met someone who can look you in the eye and tell a lie like it's the weather, then you already know the type. During our divorce, Troy showed up to court dressed like a man who just learned what a courthouse was. Wrinkled pants, a shirt that didn't fit right, eyes wide and helpless. His lawyer told the judge Troy was barely scraping by, part-time work, low pay, inconsistent hours. The judge believed him. The judge gave me the house. People think that sounds like a win. But the house came with a mortgage that ate half my paycheck, a heating system that groaned like it was offended by winter, and a backyard that looked like nature was trying to repossess it. I also got child support. Not enough to breathe, just enough to remind me I couldn't. And for 14 months, that's how it went. I patched what I could. I delayed what I couldn't. I started packing leftovers at dawn because buying lunch, just once, turns into $60 before you notice. And every time Phoebe came back from Troy's weekend visits, she'd have something new. A fresh hoodie. New shoes. A toy she picked out with Daddy. Little things. Not enough to accuse him of anything. But enough to make my stomach tighten like it recognized a pattern my brain didn't want to name. Because how does a man who claims he's broke keep affording extras? I told myself I was being bitter. I told myself I should focus on my kid, not my ex. I told myself it wasn't my business anymore. I didn't see it coming, how wrong I was. That Saturday morning, Phoebe was at Troy for his custody weekend. The house was quiet in that fragile way that used to feel like loneliness, but lately felt like rest. I decided I'd finally deal with the backyard. It had become a jungle of dead hedges, leaning fence panels, and weeds so thick they looked confident. My coworker Nena recommended a landscaper, Garrett Novick. She said, he's solid, no nonsense, he'll just do the job. That sounded perfect. Garrett arrived early in a dusty pickup with a trailer full of tools. He had the kind of hands that look like they've done real work for a long time. He walked the yard, nodded once, and said he'd start right away. I handed him a key so he could use the downstairs bathroom if he needed it. Then I went grocery shopping because my fridge looked like a documentary about extinction. I put my phone on silent in my purse. I don't like distractions when I shop. Shopping on my budget isn't shopping. It's a tactical operation. I was comparing prices, store brand versus name brand, ounces per dollar, when my body did that thing where it senses danger before you understand it. I checked my phone. 7 missed calls. Same number. Garrett. The timestamp made my stomach drop. 40 minutes. I called back immediately. Garrett answered on the first ring, and he didn't say hello like normal. He said, "Arya, are you at home right now?" His voice had that careful calm people use when they're trying not to ignite a fire. I said, "No, I'm out, why?" There was a pause, just long enough to be wrong. Then he asked, "Is anyone else inside your house?" I laughed once, because it was such a strange question. "No, my daughter, with her dad this weekend. Why?" Another pause. And then he said, "I don't want to scare you, but I can hear a child crying." My grip tightened on the phone. I said, "A child, where?" He swallowed, and I heard wind on the line like he was outside. "Near the side entrance to the basement," he said. "Like from below, I swear it's not a TV, it's a real kid." But that wasn't the worst part. Because the next thing he said was, "I called the police. They're on the way, please come back now." I didn't even remember walking to my car. I don't remember backing out. I only remember the sound of my own heartbeat trying to climb out of my chest. The whole drive home, my brain tried to offer explanations like a desperate salesperson. Maybe it's a neighbor's kid outside. Maybe he misheard. Maybe it's an animal. Maybe it's pipes. But every maybe broke apart against one simple fact. My daughter wasn't home. So whose child was crying in my basement? When I turned onto my street, I saw the police vehicle before I even reached my driveway. Lights off, but parked like it belonged there. Garrett was standing in my yard, arms folded tight, his face pale. When he saw me, he looked relieved, like he'd been holding his breath for 40 minutes. Two officers approached me. One asked my name. Another asked if I owned the property. Then they asked if I had a basement. I said yes, of course I had a basement. And that's when one officer said, "Ma'am, there's a lock on your basement's exterior entrance. Is it?" I blinked. Exterior entrance. There's a bulkhead door on the side of the house. I never used it. It was rusted, old, and in my mind basically decorative. I told them I didn't even have a key for it. The officer's eyes narrowed slightly, not at me, at the situation. They led me around the side yard. The bulkhead doors were open. And there was a shiny padlock, hanging from a chain like it had been installed recently. Not rusted. Not old. New. One of the officers said softly, "This was locked. We cut it." My mouth went dry. Because if it was locked from the outside, someone had been locking something in. They went down first. I followed, but my legs felt like they belonged to someone else. The basement was unfinished. Concrete floor, bare walls, exposed beams. The front section was normal. Laundry, water heater, shelves of cleaning supplies. That's the part I used. But there's a concrete support wall, separating the front from the back. After the divorce, I had shoved boxes into that back section. Troy's leftover junk, my own deal with it later piles. I hadn't stepped back there in 14 months. There was no reason to. It was where I hid my past. The officers moved toward the stacked boxes. One of them pointed. "See that?" he said. The boxes weren't just stacked. They'd been arranged. Like a barrier. Like someone wanted a wall made of cardboard. The officers pulled a few aside, and my breath caught. Behind the boxes was a small cleared space. Not dusty. Not abandoned. Set up. A folding table. A diaper bag. A foam play mat with toys. And in the corner, a portable crib. Inside the crib was a toddler boy, face red, cheeks wet, crying with that exhausted panic that makes your own body ache. I had never seen that child in my life. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. My brain kept trying to reject reality like it was an error message. An officer crouched near the crib and spoke gently to the baby. Another officer turned to me. "Ma'am, Do you know who this child is? I shook my head so fast it made me dizzy. The baby reached for the air like he was searching for someone who was supposed to come back. And all I could think was, someone left him here. In my house. In my basement. Like it was normal. I didn't see it coming, the detail that made it worse. The diaper bag had a stitched tag on the strap. 2 letters. CL. And in the front pocket was a pediatrician appointment card. The last name, written on it, made my vision blur. Lyndon. My ex-husband's last name. My skin went cold in a way I can't fully describe. Because you can be angry at your ex. You can feel betrayed. You can even suspect cheating. But finding a baby with his last name, hidden behind boxes in your basement, that's a different kind of horror. The officers called for paramedics. One asked me to sit down. I sat on the bottom stair and tried to breathe like my lungs still understood their job. Upstairs, I heard footsteps. A car door slammed outside. Then another. I climbed the bulkhead steps like I was being pulled by a string. And there she was, walking across my side yard with the confidence of someone who had done it 100 times. Lenor Lyndon. Troy's mother. 61 years old, neat hair, cardigan even in warm weather. She carried a pharmacy bag in one hand and a bottle of electrolyte drink in the other. She saw the police vehicle. She froze. Then she saw me. And her face moved through emotions like pages flipping too fast. Shock, fear, calculation. And then, somehow, annoyance. Like I had rearranged her schedule. The officer stepped toward her and asked her name. Lenor tried to smile, but it didn't land. I'm here for Cody, she said. Cody? She said it like it was obvious. The officer asked, Cody who? Lenor hesitated. Then she said it. Cody Lyndon. My knees almost gave out. Stay till the end, because the twist that came after this shocked everyone, including me. Lenor wasn't angry. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't even denying it. She looked anxious, but not about the police. About the baby. Is he okay? She kept asking. Please tell me he's okay. The officers separated her from me and began questioning her. I stood close enough to hear. Lenor admitted she'd been watching Cody during the weekdays for months. She said it like she was describing watering a neighbor's plants. I just needed somewhere quiet, she explained. My community doesn't allow small children, strict rules. So she used my basement. My basement. Like it was a storage unit she had permission to access. She had a key. Troy's old key. The one he was supposed to return after the divorce. He never did. Lenor said she came while I was at work. She entered through the bulkhead. She stayed in the back section. She left before I got home. 3 to 4 times a week. For months. I felt like the house had been violated in a way a locked door can't fix. Then an officer asked the question that tightened the noose. If this is a weekday arrangement, he said, why are you here today? It's Saturday. Lenor's mouth tightened. She glanced at me, then looked away. Finally, she said, Sabrina picked up an extra shift. Troy has Phoebe this weekend and he can't handle both kids. Both kids. The words hit me like a slap. Because in that moment, the crying baby wasn't just a terrifying secret. He was proof that Troy had a whole second family. I thought finding a toddler in my basement was the worst part. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the timeline. Cody looked around 18 months. Maybe a little older. And my divorce had been finalized 14 months ago. My divorce proceedings had started 6 months before that. My throat tightened as the math assembled itself in my head. Cody had been conceived while Troy and I were still married. While we were still living in the same house, eating quiet dinners, trying to pretend the marriage wasn't bleeding out. He had been building a new life while I was still trying to save the old one. Lenor kept talking, trying to justify it. She said the basement setup was safe. She said she cleaned. She said she never went upstairs. She said she thought I wouldn't mind, since the house was empty during the day. Like my absence made it public property. Then she said something that made me feel sick. I was only gone for a little while, she insisted. I felt dizzy and I had to go to urgent care. I thought I'd be back in 15 minutes. How long were you gone? The officer asked. Lenor whispered, 45 minutes. She left a toddler alone in a basement, locked behind a padlock, for 45 minutes. The officers confirmed she had a medical receipt. So yes, the dizzy spell was real. But the choice was still hers. And Troy. Because Troy created this arrangement. Troy handed out keys to my home like it was his. Then Troy arrived. And if you expected him to show up panicked, frantic, terrified, he didn't. He stepped out of his pickup truck calm, as a man arriving at a meeting. He greeted the officers politely. He asked if Cody was okay in a steady voice. He didn't look at me at first. When he finally did, it was brief. A nod. Not apology. Not shock. Just acknowledgement. Like we were two neighbors discussing a fence. That nod chilled me more than the baby's crying. Because it told me Troy didn't see this as a moral collapse. He saw it as an inconvenience to manage. He signed paperwork. The officers released Cody to him because, legally, he was the father and there were no immediate abuse allegations. A child welfare report was filed. An investigation opened. But Troy walked away with his son that same day. And I stood in my yard, feeling like my own life had been robbed while I was still living inside it. That night, Phoebe was still at Troy. I sat alone in my kitchen staring at the wall, listening to the house settle. Every creak sounded like a secret. I went down into the basement and stood in the front section, the part I knew, staring at the concrete wall that separated me from the space I hadn't checked. And that's when the second wave hit. Not fear. Not betrayal. Numbers. Because if Troy was truly as broke as he claimed in court, how was he affording a second child? Diapers. Doctor visits. Formula. A bigger apartment with Sabrina Voss, the girlfriend I now knew had existed during my marriage. How was he paying for all that, and still acting helpless when the judge asked about child support? The math didn't add up. And for 14 months, I had been too exhausted to question it. I didn't sleep. I sat on the dryer with my arms wrapped around myself and decided something that felt like a door unlocking. I was done being the woman who didn't check. Monday morning, I told my supervisor I'd be late. It was the first time I'd said that in 3 years. At work, Nana took one look at my face and pulled me into the supply closet like we were in middle school. I told her everything. Garrett's calls, the baby, Lenor, Troy's calm nod. When I finished, Nana didn't gasp dramatically. She didn't offer a motivational quote. She said 4 words. Call my cousin Bridget. That's how I met Bridget Calloway, a family law attorney with sharp eyes and a voice that made you believe in consequences again. Her office smelled like coffee and paper. She listened without interrupting. When I finally stopped talking, she tapped her pen once and said, Arya, this isn't only about your basement. I swallowed. She leaned forward. This is about what Troy told the court under oath. The words under oath landed with weight. Bridget explained that if Troy misrepresented his income during the divorce, child support could be reopened. In some cases, the settlement could be revisited. Not because I wanted to punish him out of spite, but because the court's job is to base decisions on truth. And if the truth was different, the outcome should be different. Bridget said, "We don't do revenge the messy way, we do it the smart way." Then she gave me another name. Walt Treadway. Forensic accountant. Semi-retired. The kind of man who treats spreadsheets like treasure maps. Walt showed up wearing suspenders and carrying a folder so thick it looked like it had its own zip code. He asked me questions I didn't understand at first. Where Troy worked, what he claimed he earned, whether he had side businesses, whether his family had assets. I told him what I knew, which wasn't much. Troy worked at a flooring distributor. He claimed low wages, part-time. He said he had no significant assets. He said he was just trying to survive. Walt made a humming sound like a man hearing a song he recognized. He started with public records, because the people who lie always forget the boring places where truth sits quietly. He searched the state commerce registry. He found a business, Lyndon Clean LLC. Registered years ago. Owner listed as Troy Lyndon. And the registered agent, Troy Lyndon. Walt circled it in red ink like it had insulted him personally. He explained it to me simply. A registered agent is the person who receives official documents. Troy had put himself on the paperwork because the system required it. And because he assumed no one would ever look. But that wasn't the worst part. Because when Bridget subpoenaed records, the numbers started speaking. The business was a laundromat. Cash heavy. Quiet income. The deposits didn't match a barely surviving narrative. There were regular transfers from the laundromat account into Troy's personal account. Not hundreds. Thousands. Over and over. Then Walt pulled Troy's employment records. The job Troy claimed was part-time, low pay. It was. It was full-time. With overtime. And the hourly wage wasn't what he had told the judge. Walt slid the printout across the desk toward me. The numbers sat there like a confession. Troy was making around $70,000 a year from his job alone. With laundromat income on top, his real earnings were closer to 6 figures. Maybe more. I stared at the page until the ink blurred. Because for 14 months, I had eaten cheap dinners and skipped little comforts so I could afford Phoebe's life. And Troy had been lying with the ease of a man who had never once worried about a grocery total. Walt wasn't done. He traced another business connected through deposits. A second laundromat under a slightly different company name, Lyndon Fresh LLC. Opened less than a year ago. Funded mostly in cash. Registered to a holding entity. And after a few more steps, more paperwork, more tracing, Walt landed back at Troy. He had built a second income stream while telling a judge he was struggling. He had created a financial shadow and lived inside it. And I had been paying the price for his darkness. This part mattered more than I expected. Walt also noticed Lenor wasn't getting much money from the laundromat she owned. She was receiving a small monthly amount, like an allowance. Walt said, either the business is failing or someone is lying to her too. It hit me then. Troy wasn't just deceiving me. He was managing everyone. Giving each person a different version of reality. Keeping us separated so we couldn't compare notes. And that's when the next twist came. Sabrina Voss, the girlfriend, cooperated. Not because she suddenly wanted to help me. Not because we became friends. But because she realized Troy had lied to her too. During the child welfare investigation, an investigator mentioned Troy's claimed income from the divorce. Sabrina's face reportedly went blank. Because she lived with Troy. She knew their lifestyle. Not luxury, but comfortable. And it was $18,000 a year comfortable. She hadn't seen the divorce filings. She hadn't known what he told the court. Now she did. And she understood something quickly. If Troy went down, she could get dragged into the mess even if she didn't help build it. So she gave investigators information. Schedules. Bank transfers for household expenses. Confirmation that Troy managed the laundromats. Details that matched Walt's findings. Troy's mistake wasn't lying. It was assuming no one would ever compare stories. But that wasn't the worst part. Because I still had to act normal. Bridget warned me, do not confront him, not yet. Let him think the basement issue is the only problem. So every other Friday, when Troy pulled up to pick up Phoebe, I smiled. I handed over her overnight bag. I said, have a good weekend. And inside my chest, my heart pounded like it was trying to escape. Those were the loneliest moments. Pretending peace with a man who had built a second life on my silence. Meanwhile, another person stepped forward, someone I should have listened to months earlier. My neighbor, Dolores Kijek. Dolores is 74 and has the energy of a person who treats suspicion like a hobby. She came over carrying a notebook. Not a cute notebook. A serious one. She said, I tried to tell you twice. I remembered. A few months back, Dolores had mentioned seeing an older woman going around the side of my house during weekdays. I dismissed it. Delivery person, utility worker, whatever. Dolores didn't dismiss things. She documented them. Her notebook had dates, times, descriptions. And she also had doorbell camera footage from her own house that caught part of my side yard. There was Lenor, arriving like clockwork. Car seat visible. Bag in hand. Leaving hours later. Again and again. For months. Dolores looked at me softly and said, Sweetheart, you were tired. I understand. But tired people get taken advantage of. That night I called my mother, Francine Berger, because when your life cracks open, you call your mom. Francine's first words weren't, are you okay? They were, how did you not know? Mothers have a gift for aiming directly at the bruise you're already pressing. But after she got it out of her system, she shifted into action. She wanted to change locks. Clean the basement. Bring food. Call every official agency she could name. Her love is aggressive. It always has been. And this time, I accepted it. Bridget filed the motion to modify child support based on concealed income. Walt's analysis was attached. Public filings. Deposit patterns. Employment records. Dolores' notebook. Investigator, reports from the basement incident. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was evidence. And evidence has a different kind of power. 3 days after Troy's attorney received the packet, Bridget got a call. The first thing his attorney said was, can we resolve this without a hearing? Bridget told me, that's how you know you hit something real. Troy's first settlement offer was insulting. Slightly higher support, small retroactive payment. Like he could patch a 6-figure lie with a few $1,000s and a polite signature. Bridget did counter right away. She let silence do work. Then she responded with a detailed breakdown of Troy's actual income, clean columns, dates, totals. And at the bottom, Bridget added one sentence. A sentence she said she'd been waiting to write. My client is prepared to discuss the perjury implications with the court. Perjury? Lying under oath. Not oops, I rounded down. A deliberate falsehood in a legal proceeding. That word changed Troy's tone. It also changed Lenor's situation. Separate from our financial case, Lenor faced consequences for entering my home without permission and leaving a child unattended. The court took her medical episode into account. The most serious charge was reduced, but she still pleaded to trespassing. She received probation and an order to stay away from my property. She cried in court. Not dramatic sobbing. The quiet kind, like she'd finally realized her son's family plan had been built on her back too. And then Troy's lawyer called again. This time, there was no playful negotiation. No testing. They talked numbers like grown-ups. Real support. Real retroactive adjustment. And something else, redistribution, because hidden business income should have been considered during our divorce. It took weeks. It took phone calls and paperwork and long nights where I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if the system would actually protect people like me. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, Bridget called me at my desk. Her voice was steady. The judge signed the order, she said. And she read the new terms. Ongoing child support increased to reflect Troy's actual income. A retroactive payment covering the months he underpaid. And a structured payout from the hidden business income that should have been part of the original settlement. The total shift wasn't just money. It was air. It was the ability to stop drowning quietly. I thanked Bridget. Then I hung up, walked into the office bathroom, locked the door, and cried for 10 minutes. Not because I was sad. Not because I was happy. Because my body finally understood it could stop bracing for impact. That evening, I picked up Phoebe from after-school care. She buckled herself in like she always does, proud and focused. Then she looked at me through the rearview mirror and said, "Mom, why are you smiling?" I told her I had a good day. She nodded like that made perfect sense. Then she asked if we could have pasta for dinner. Not eggs. Not rice. Pasta. And I said yes. Because I could. When the retroactive payment hit my account, I stared at my banking app like it was a magic trick. I refreshed the screen again and again, half expecting it to disappear. It didn't. The first thing I did was pay off my credit card. The balance that had been hovering like a storm cloud, collecting interest, keeping me trapped. Gone. Then I fixed the heating system. A real repair, not duct tape and prayers. Then I fixed my car, the problem I'd been ignoring by turning the radio louder. I started a small education fund for Phoebe. Not huge, but real. Consistent. A seed instead of a wish. I didn't become rich. I didn't redesign the house or buy flashy things. What I bought was stability. And if you've never lived without stability, you might not understand what a luxury it is. Stability is saying yes to a field trip without checking your account first. It's buying fruit without calculating cost per bite. It's sleeping without a background fear that something will break tomorrow and you won't be able to fix it. Troy's life changed too. Not with drama. Not with screaming. With consequences. The perjury issue followed him like a shadow he couldn't shake. Sabrina left within a couple months. Quietly. Methodically. She reportedly told an investigator she couldn't build a life with someone whose first instinct was always deception. I never celebrated her pain. I didn't need to. I just recognized the pattern. Troy's lies eventually poisoned every room he stood in. Lenor stopped speaking to him after she learned how much money the laundromats were actually making. Money she hadn't been told about. He had been rationing truth to his own mother. And in the end, that betrayal hit her harder than it hit me, because mothers trust differently. As for me, I changed the bulkhead entrance. New door. New lock. My key only. I cleaned out the back section of the basement. I hauled away boxes I'd been avoiding since the divorce. Troy's leftovers. My own emotional clutter. I scrubbed the floor until it smelled like nothing, like a fresh start. Then I did something that felt symbolic, even if I didn't admit it at first. I turned that back space into something safe. A rug. A small shelf of books. A second-hand armchair. A lamp with warm light. Phoebe found it on her own. She came upstairs wide-eyed and announced, "Mom, there's a cozy room downstairs." Cozy room. That's what she named it. And she claimed it like kids claim what they love. She started reading down there after school, wrapped in a blanket, humming to herself. The same space that had been used to hide Troy's secrets became Phoebe's quiet place. A space for stories instead of lies. I brought Dollar's flowers and a thank you card. She accepted them with a nod like she'd been expecting it. Then she invited me in for coffee and showed me her notebook again, because Dollar's will outlive us all. Fueled entirely by documentation and stubbornness. My mother never apologized in words for the "how did you not know" comment. That's not Francine's style. Instead, she started picking Phoebe up once a week so I could leave work on time. She started bringing meals on Sundays. Soup, casseroles, brisket that took hours. Love delivered through action. One night, Phoebe asked me what used to be in the cozy room before. I told her, just boxes, old stuff. She made a face and said, "That's boring, it's way better now." And she was right. Here, what I learned. Some people build their lives on keeping others exhausted. They count on you being too busy, too tired, too overwhelmed to check the places you don't want to look. They count on your trust being automatic. But secrets are fragile. They don't collapse because of screaming. They collapse because of light. Sometimes, all it takes is hearing a man to fix your yard, and him hearing something he wasn't supposed to hear. If you made it to the end, tell me this in the comments. Would you have checked the basement sooner, or would you have assumed it was nothing like I did? And if you want more emotional betrayal and justice stories like this, please like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves a smart revenge ending. This story is fictional and for entertainment purposes only.